In this video, what we are going to show you is how to build a very small application using Spring MVC. Spring MVC is a module of Spring which lets you build web applications. So in this web application, what we are showing, what this app does is, it is like a demo of the basic features of Spring MVC, and this application here, it shows a list of inventory products, the description of each product and the price of each product, and it also lets you increase the prices of the products by a certain percentage. Okay, so let's look at how we have developed this. So I'm opening my Eclipse, and let me give you a quick glimpse of the files involved here. Under the Spring App source folder, we have 4 folders: one for domain, which will contain the domain objects; one for repository, which will contain the data access objects; and then we have a service package, which will contain the service class, the service interface, and the class which implements that service interface. And then if there are any supporting classes, those are also present in the service package. And in the web package, we have all the controllers that Spring uses. So MVC stands for Model, View, and Controller. So the model includes the service classes and your domain objects, and also it includes all the data access objects. The view is basically all the JSPs. So all those JSPs are in the warp webinf JSP folder, and in this application we have 3 files: hello.jsp, include.jsp, and priceincrease.jsp. So all these are part of the view. So the view is what you see on the UI, and the JSP files correspond to the view. And then we have the controller, which controls the flow of the application. So besides having the main controller, which is called as the front controller or the dispatcher servlet, we also have the application level controllers. So we have a few controllers here called the inventory controller, and the price increase form controller, and the hello controller. So we are going to discuss this in terms of the model view container architectural pattern. Okay, so the first file, I'm going to start from the web layer and then go down from the web layer to the model classes. So the first file that we are going to look at is the web.xml. The web.xml basically configures your application at the very high level. So the first thing is, in our application there is a welcome file list. So the most important the files listed here are test.jsp and index.jsp. We don't have test.jsp in our application. It is just meant for demonstration purposes here. We have what is called as an index.jsp. So whenever you bring up the web app and go to localhost / the port number / Spring app, it will take you to the index.jsp, and when I press enter, it's going to take you to the index.jsp, and that is configured in your web.xml. And in your web.xml, you also configure the servlet that we are using. The servlet that you are using is called as Spring app. That's our that's our application. And this Spring app servlet application is serviced by what is called as a dispatcher servlet. So any request coming to Spring app will be handled by the dispatcher servlet, which is also called as the front controller, and it's always loaded on startup when you set it to 1. Okay, and we also map the incoming request. If the incoming request contains star.htm, it will always be handled by Spring app. You can have a more specific URL pattern, but for demonstration purposes we are using a very simple URL pattern called star.htm. And notice this is not star.html, it is star.htm. Okay, and then we have what is called as a context loader listener. What this does is, it will automatically bootstrap the Spring application context.xml, in which we have configured all our service classes, the domain and the data access objects. I'll get to that in a moment. So this is what we have configured in our web.xml. And from and after web.xml, the other important file is the Spring app servlet.xml. So let's look at the Spring app servlet.xml. In the Spring app servlet.xml, so if you look at our UI, when we went to Spring app, it takes you to the index.jsp for any application. But if you see in the URL here, it is sending it to hello.htm. So let's find out how this is happening. So what happens is, let's first open index.jsp. So in index.jsp, all we are doing is we are redirecting the URL to hello.htm, and that is the reason why we see hello.htm here. And now let's see what it is, hello.htm and not hello.html. So there is no such file called hello.html in our application, or we don't even have a file called hello.htm as well. So it's when I try to open that resource, it's not matching anything. So what is hello.htm? It is just a URL pattern, and if you look at the web.xml, since it ends with star.htm, it will be handled by Spring app. And Spring app configuration for the Spring app is in the Spring app-servlet.xml. So the name that you use here is a prefix given to the servlet XML file. So the XML file will always be Spring app-servlet.xml. So if you have hello here, the servlet XML would have been hello-servlet.xml. So let's go to the Spring app-servlet.xml. So the hello.htm will be handled by the inventory controller. So this is the controller of the C of the MVC. Okay, and in this we have configured the product manager, which is referring to another bean called product manager, and we don't see the product manager here in this file. So where is this product manager coming from? So in the web.xml, I told you at the very beginning it has a listener class called the context loader listener, and that automatically loads up the Spring application context.xml, and the file that it is looking for is also called as application context.xml. And in this file, the product manager is configured to be a simple product manager. So we have a service class called product manager, which is an interface that defines two methods: increase price by a certain percentage and get products, which will return you a list, and it will return you a list of products. And if I look at the classes which implement the product manager, I press Ctrl T and it will show me the classes which implement this interface, and we have simple product manager. The simple product manager will provide the implementation for those two methods: get products and increase price. So let's go back to the application context.xml. So we have configured the product manager to be using a class of simple product manager, and that in turn does a setter injection of the product DAO. The product DAO is another bean which is being defined over here, and what it is doing is we have a DAO called product DAO, which is the data access objects for accessing products. So in this particular example, this DAO provides CRUD operations: create, read, update, delete. But in our example, all we are doing is we are doing a create and we are retrieving some products. So let's look at the classes which implement the product DAO. So press Ctrl T, and then you can see that JDBC product DAO provides an implementation of this, and the implementation that it is using is basically JDBC. Actually, it uses what is called as the simple JDBC DAO support, which is the JDBC template provided by Spring. So you can see that it is using the simple JDBC template to do queries and updates. Okay, so let's go back to the application context.xml, and the product DAO is Spring injected with a data source, and the data source is a basic data source in which you configure the driver, the URL, the username, and the password. And where are all these coming from? If you see here, these are all nothing but some properties configured in a file called as jdbc.properties. And where are these coming? Where was this declared? We have what is called as a property configurer, which is loading the jdbc.properties file from the class path. And the jdbc.properties, we have the list of key value pairs for all those properties that we are using in the DAO, for the DAO's data source. And then we configure the transaction manager to provide transaction advice for the methods in the product manager. So if you look at the pattern here, the point code that is being used is for all the methods of the product manager, apply this transaction advice. So you're applying that behavior. So all the methods which start with a get are called as read only, and for all the other methods we are applying a transaction context, and we are using the Spring data source transaction manager, which provides declarative transaction management. So let's go back to the this application. We came to the hello.htm from the index.jsp. So the index.jsp basically redirected it to the hello.htm, and hello.htm is handled by the inventory controller. And what is the inventory controller? Basically it implements the Spring controller interface, which has a method called handle request, which takes a HTTP servlet request and a HTTP servlet response and returns a model and view object. So in this, what we are doing is we are creating a model object called myModel, which is nothing but a map which contains a string as a key and an object as a value. And in that map, we are putting two keys called now and products. Now basically is referring to the current time, and products refers to the list of products that we retrieve by using the product manager service. The product manager service, if you remember, it was Spring injected by setter injection. It was done in the Spring app servlet.xml. So the inventory controller was injected with the product manager. Okay, and then we return from this method. So this get products will go to, so let's go to the get products. So it's taking you to the interface. So we need to go to the class which implements that interface. That's a simple product manager, and in get products it will use the product DAO to get the product list. And this one goes to the database, issues a JDBC statement and retrieves the list of products. Let's get back to the inventory controller, and from here we return the model and view. The first argument to this is the view, and the view is hello. But I told you views always correspond to JSPs. But here we are not saying it's a hello.jsp. We're just saying it's a hello. So where is this configured? So go back to the Spring app servlet.xml, and in that you'll see what is called as a view resolver. So the view resolver uses a prefix and a suffix to identify the location of the JSP for that view. So it will look for hello.jsp in web.jsp folder. So let's go there and look for that file. So in hello.jsp, in the hello.jsp, what we are doing here is we show a heading and a greeting, and we iterate over the list of products and print out the description of each product and the price of each product. And then we have a link to increase the prices of the products, which goes to priceincrease.htm URL. Okay, and the heading and the greeting, if you see here and if you see on the UI, we don't see anything like this. So this is coming from another file which provides internationalization so that you can change your application for different languages. So all these heading and greeting are coming from a file called messages.properties. and you see the heading and the greeting here. So you see the greeting is hello, it is now, and that's what it shows over here. And now let's get back to the inventory controller. The inventory controller then sends it to the hello.jsp, which shows the list of products and their prices. And then it is populating the model with an object called myModel, which has the list of products and the current time. And you access this now and the products in your JSP. So if you go to the hello.jsp, you will see model.now, and it will show you the time. And similarly, when we want to see the description, we say the product.description, and this product is coming from the model.products. So this products is what we configured in the inventory controller. So if you see here, you see the products, and that's what we are referring to in here. And each product is a reference to each product that we are iterating over. So this is how the inventory controller works. And now let's see how the price increase page works. So when you click on the price increase, at the bottom you see that it is referring to the URL localhost:8080/springapp/priceincrease.html. Again, that is not a HTML file, it is a URL, and we need to see who is handling that URL. So let's go back to the Spring App Servlet.xml, and in the Spring App Servlet.xml you'll find that there is a price increase.html, which is being handled by the price increase form controller. So let's open the price increase form controller, and this price increase form controller basically extends a class called as a simple form controller. The reason it is extending the simple form controller is that this page is a form. A form in a HTML page basically collects inputs from the user. So here we are collecting the price increase percentage. So it has a method called onSubmit, which needs to be overridden from the simple form controller. And this takes the command object, which is a simple object, and the kind of object it is pointing to is the price increase object. And the price increase object is a simple POJO, which has a percentage and a getter and setter for the percentage. So from the command object we get the percentage, which is from the price increase object, and where do we need to configure that the command object basically contains a price increase object. All configuration is always done in the Spring App Servlet.xml, and then here you see that the command class is nothing but a price increase class. So let's go back to the controller. Now we have got the percentage increase. We use the service class to increase the prices of all the products by calling the increase price. So let's look at the implementation of this. So it takes you to the interface, but I wanted to go to the class which implements that interface. Press Ctrl T, go to the simple product manager, and here we have the increase price. So what we are doing here is we get the products and iterate over all the products, and for each product we get the current price and increase it by the percentage increase, and we compute the new price, and then we set the price of each product by calling the setter method of the price for each product. And then we need to save that product, and we save it by making use of the DAO, the product DAO. So we save the product by passing each product to it. I'm not going to go into the details of how this is implemented. You can see that in the product DAO class, which would be the JDBC product DAO, and here you can see how it is doing the update, the save of the product. All it is doing is it is issuing a SQL update statement which says update products, set description equal to description, price equal to price, where ID is something. So you can look into the details of this. So let's go back to the controller, the price increase form controller. So it has increased the products, increased the prices of the products, and then it returns a model and view object, and it is using what is called as a success view. So where is the success view defined? Success view is also defined in the Spring App Servlet.xml. So here you see that the success view is nothing but hello.htm, and hello.htm will again go to the inventory controller, retrieve the latest list of products along with their prices, and then display it on the UI by using the hello.jsp. So here in the price increase form controller, we have configured the command class, we have also configured the form view, the success view, and the product manager. And if you notice, there is something called as a validator here. So on this UI, when you try to increase a percentage by a very large amount and click execute, it does some validation. So it says don't be greedy, price raise has to be between -20 and 50%. So before this page is submitted, it does some validation by using the price increase validator. So let's look at the price increase validator. The price increase validator, basically what it does is it implements a validator class which has a method called validate, and validate takes the form object. The form object that we are passing is nothing but price increase. So if you go to the Spring App Servlet.xml, the command class is nothing but a price increase class. So that same class comes into the price increase validator, and it will contain the percentage price increase that the user enters on the UI. Using this PI, we do all the validations. We check whether it is empty by checking for whether it is null, and we also check whether the percentage is greater than a certain amount of percentage, and whether it is less than a certain percentage as well. And so basically what we are checking is the percentage lies within a certain range. If it is outside the range, we have to show an error message. And these error messages, if you see here on the UI, we say don't be greedy, price raise has to be between -20 and 50%, is basically is not shown over here. So here what we are doing is we are using the string called error.too.High, which is read from a file called messages.properties, and messages.properties provides you the mechanism to provide internationalization so that you can migrate to different languages. So in messages.properties you'll find error.too.High, and you also see error.too.Low, and in this you also see, so for error.too.High it says don't be greedy, price raise has to be between 0% and 1%. The 0 and 1, they're actually placeholders, and these placeholders are populated by this array of objects. The first one is an integer which is pointing to the minimum percentage. The second one is the maximum percentage, and these are defined in over here as the default min percentage and max percentage. So this is how the validator works. Similarly, we do this for the minimum, for the error.too.Low as well. And for error.too.Low, we have, for the error.too.Low, it says you have to specify a percentage higher than 0. The first index of the array starts with the index 0, and this 0 is nothing but this minimum percentage. That's the first argument that we pass to this array. Okay, so all the configuration for this form is done in this price increase.htm bean, which is using this price increase form controller, and we are setting the command class which collects all the user input. We are configuring the validator, we are configuring the success view. Success view is where the view that it goes to after it has successfully increased the prices of all the products. And then we have configured it to use the simple product manager by using this reference bean, which is actually defined in the application context.xml. And the product manager is Spring injected with the product DAO, which in turn is Spring injected with a data source, and that data source is configured over here, and it is getting the list of these property values from the jdbc.properties. And then we have a transaction manager which makes the get methods to be read-only and the star methods to have a transaction context. So let's increase the prices of the products and see that it is working. So we'll give a value which is in the valid range. So let's give 30 and press execute. And now it has increased the prices of all the products by 30%. And then it goes back to the hello.htm. That is a success view. And hello.htm basically takes you to hello.jsp. So this is how this whole application works. So this basically demonstrates a very simple application that is developed using Spring MVC.